folks, welcome to AAPI Women Leads podcast and YouTube. I am Dr. Connie Wun, and today we have an exciting guest, brilliant person, Killer Being Nguyen, who is an MMA fighter, a Muay Thai fighter, an author, a philanthropic kind of amazing human. So welcome to our new show.
Thank you. I don't know how to follow that. It's great to be here. I'm excited to talk about all the issues that we were told not to talk about. I'm excited to talk about life and being an Asian woman.
So B, there are so many questions I want to ask you. I know that you are one of the first Asian American women to enter professional fighting. And I know there are a lot of other kind of challenges around being a woman in general as a professional MMA fighter. So can you tell me and our audience, what are some of the images around Asian women and women in general that have affected you and your career and what that means for you?
Right. It's been tough as a woman in combat sports, because you get all these questions of, why do you fight? You're so pretty, or you're a girl, oh my God, it's for guys, you know what I mean? And when I started out, it was still pretty new. It was just starting to get mainstream. And the questions were tough because we had to constantly have a chip on our shoulder. Me personally, I enjoy proving people wrong, but I have to ask myself a question. Recently, I asked myself a question: Do I enjoy proving people wrong, or have I just accepted that as a role? Have I just accepted others' expectations of me failing, and then taken some kind of joy out of proving them wrong, because that was just my reality?
Okay.
I've done interviews prior, some may have seen it, some may haven't, but I used to say, like, I worked best with a chip on my shoulder. I worked best when people didn't believe in me. And I don't find that true anymore, because the older I get, the more I realize that was just me taking on what other people expect of me.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to be known by my name and not by this girl fighter, you know. So those are the challenges I faced as a female fighter. Now, as a Vietnamese, little correction, I am the second professional Vietnamese fighter. There are many Asians before us, but specifically Vietnamese. Andy Nguyen, is a friend of mine, and we fought each other. She was the first. But I think that with Asian American, I mean, as an Asian woman in general, this is such a big question, but what I've seen growing up, and I'm sure this is what others see, is that Asian women are soft. We're soft-spoken, we are quiet, we are well-mannered, we don't make much noise, we don't take up much space. Some may go as far as saying we're submissive. I've dated guys when I was younger. Now I think people are learning more about our culture, but I've dated guys who are younger. When I was younger, who just was like, oh, she's gonna cook my meals, and honey, I want to cook your meals, okay, but I don't want you to expect it of me. Okay. But they really, really thought that Asian women were submissive. And so I just think that expectation of us, and if you know me, you know me. That's not what you're. No, I take up space. I wear my hair how I want. I curse. I speak on things people don't want to hear about, and I'm trying to break those false, accusations about us, those things about us. But I hope that I hope that the young Asian girls growing up don't have to work every single day for me to prove people wrong, that I'm not quiet, Yeah, so a lot of struggles, but it makes me stronger, so I'm okay with it, but I just don't want the future to have to deal with it.
Right. So I like what you're saying, right, around there are these images around women in general not being strong fighters or not being fighters in general. And then I hear you saying, you know, Asian women in particular, there are these images of us as submissive, quiet, that we will cook for people, and I can't cook, so that's going to be a
Connie,
part.
you can't cook?
I can eat really well though.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a stereotype, but you're also saying that you don't want to continue having to fight to prove these images incorrect.
Yes.
Right? You want to be seen
As I am.
as you are.
Or just not seen until I'm seen. Like, don't expect anything. Don't think of these things. Like, give me a chance, you know? When I was younger, I was really loud. I mean, I'm still pretty loud. When I was younger, I think I did it more so. So that, let me just shut you guys down now.
Right.
When I walked into a room when I was young, I was like, cursing, obnoxious. I was just like, F this, because let me just shut you guys down now, because I already know what you think of me. Now that I'm older, I have a lot more confidence, but it was a lot of time put into dealing with something a young girl shouldn't have to deal with.
Right.
So in the future, I want them to put all the energy into being good humans and to being creative and to thinking about what they want to do in life instead of thinking of how to prove these stereotypes wrong or thinking of how to make you like me better.
Right.
You know, it's just not something people should have to do.
I appreciate that because we have a lot of younger followers who are part of the AAPI Women Lead, and we want to be able to encourage them to own themselves, right, their entirety, because as you alluded, it took you a little bit longer to get here, and I know it took me so much longer. We wish we had a killer bee in our lives when we were babies. And I also hear you saying that when you were younger, because of these images of Asian women and women in general, you felt you had to do it really differently.
Yes. You had to be twice as good. You know, and when I was younger, I was a little lost in how to do it, but I had to be twice as loud.
Right.
Because you expect me to be so quiet.
Right.
I didn't know how, like, where I could be.
Right.
It was either or, you know?
Right.
And so.
It doesn't let you, these images that they like impose on you, don't let you be real.
Yeah.
Right? They make you like be hella defensive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I've had a lot of like projecting when I was younger, you know? So you either kind of shrink into it. So I filmed a show called Survivor.
That was one
you guys
thing.
watch it. It's a social experiment. And they have themes. And what I realized in this show was, and by the way, the show's amazing, super real. And this is
Killer Bee.
and this is why I say I learned so much. They have these themes. Let's say David versus Goliath was mine, right? And even if I didn't feel like a David going in, or some others didn't feel like Goliaths going in, but because those were our themes and those were tacked onto us, we start taking on the role of what it is to be a David and what it is to be a Goliath. How long can you stay with Goliath mentality if they call you a David every day? Morning, night, you know, all of it.
Right.
So I think that I was defensive and I went the other way. And I think some girls assume this role, you know, oh, men will like us more if we're submissive. How do I get him to like me? Oh, he thinks I'm gonna be soft and quiet. I get that all the time in dating, and I get that all the time just in general. People want me to be a little quieter.
Right.
People want me to be less masculine. People want me to, I don't know, carry myself differently. And I maybe thought for a split second that I might want to conform. And then I was like, hell no.
It's hard.
No, hell
it's
no.
Super
It's hard because the things that you the things that you see other people have, it's hard to be yourself when it's always, the grass is always greener on the other side, right? I want that perfect family and I want that perfect thing. And as I'm talking to you, it actually changes my view of the world. So when I was younger, I thought, they're married. Well, she probably doesn't talk back to him. She probably does this. I'm thinking this, but that's probably not true.
Right.
I've taken on in my head, like that's
Right.
what other people are doing, so I should do that to get what they want.
Right.
But in reality is, that's not the truth. You
Right.
know, the truth is you will find somebody, obviously I've been dating, right? I'm like,
She's texting me.
I'm
Talking
projecting
about
right
her
now. First of all, you will find somebody who will like you the way you are, and you'll find your place in the world and your space in the world exactly how you are.
Right.
And it will be freeing, and it will be, I'm just so happy to be myself. You know, just so happy. And I hope that other people will do the same and not fall into these identities that people have given them. But it's human, right? Like with the show, these are brilliant people I was on the show with, and day by day we just started saying like, oh no, they're bigger, they're Goliaths, we're Davids, we're small. We just started saying that, and after the show, when I talked to the people, everybody's same consensus, like, you know, we started losing ourselves into like these identities that others gave us. And it's not because you're weak, it's not because you're lost, it's because it's strong. Outside influence is strong.
I mean, we talk about that too, like these kind of racialized, gendered images of people. They get imposed on you, right? And it impacts your being. And one of the things you end up having to do is, again, to either, you have to definitely navigate it.
Right.
That's a real thing.
Right.
And then it impacts your entire being.
Right.
So I appreciate what you're saying around that. There's another question that I had for you, which is, you know, AAPI Women Lead has been working with different organizations on this this topic I'm about to address. And we're also doing a research project across the country to collect the stories of our Asian and Pacific Islander women and girls, self-identified women and girls, around issues of violence, right? Interpersonal violence. #MeToo. So #MeToo has been around sexual violence, sexual harassment. We've seen it on the news. We see a documentary called Surviving R. Kelly. And one of the things that folks who have been doing this research has noticed that there aren't many stories and narratives around Asian and Pacific Islanders. We do know, according to preliminary research, that about 41 to 60% of Asian and Pacific Islander women and girls experience some type of violence, intimate violence. So I'd like to ask you, kind of what are your thoughts around #MeToo in particular and its impacts, or maybe not, on your life and what you think may be the impact for Asian and Pacific Islander girls and women, or survivors in general?
I think Me Too is great. I think that, and I've spoken about this before, and I use mostly my experiences, but violence thrives in silence, right? And that is said over and over again. Violence thrives in silence. And I think the reason that there aren't many stories about Asian women who have experiences violence is because part of our culture is to keep it within the community, you know. And I think that the way to change your perspective, obviously, is to talk to others. You know, when I started meeting strong Asian women like you, who are just loud as me, and no, honestly, I started, even as confident as I was, I became more confident. You know, and this is like in solidarity we have strength, right? And when you see, let's say you're in a class and nobody raises their hand, wouldn't you be scared to raise your hand? The more hands you see, the more you'll find the courage, you know, to raise your hand. So I think the Me Too movement is great because telling your story is great. Your story is power because it'll encourage others it'll break down the walls that we've built through violence, through suffering. My wall was like the Berlin Wall, okay? It was like so bad, and it spread everywhere. Relationships, friendships, work, everything. It was so bad. And I've been asked, how do you heal yourself? Like, how have you done this yourself? Because I haven't been scared to hurt. It's very scary to hurt. So it's less scary, a little less scary when you see others hurting. And the only way to heal yourself is to recognize your hurt. And if you see other people openly recognizing their hurt, like Terry Crews, who's a man, and I'm sure he's helped so many men. And that is the even smaller group of men who have been abused. That's hard for them too, because not very men will speak up. So I think what you're trying to do or going to do with these Asian stories is amazing. I think what Me Too is doing is amazing, because as a woman who was abused for 5 years, it was complete blackness. Of even when I walked in the grocery store, all I felt was his hand dragging me. All I see was his back while I was walking behind him. I didn't see the family grocery shopping. I didn't see the girls hanging out. I didn't see anybody, even though there was everybody. So it was like, what I say is, it's hard for the abused to reach out their hand to grab help. So it is our job to reach our hands in. Or at least make your hands feel visible. If I saw somebody kind of fishy or what's going on, I just asked sister, like, hey, girl, are you okay? If she's fine, cool. But had she not been fine, she would have seen my hand. And it would have stuck there wherever she went, grocery store, wherever. So these Me Too movements, these stories that are being told, these are hands just coming into the lives of the abused. The darkness gets a little lighter. You know, the loneliness gets a little less lonely. So I think, going back to your question, it's doing everything. It's doing everything that needs to be done for these people who feel so alone. You know, like they say, representation is everything. And so, yeah, if we're not telling our stories, let's start doing it. Let's start reaching these hands and telling these young Asian girls, it's cool to tell your story. It's okay. No one's going to be mad at you. You won't be pushed out of any community, because there's a whole other community here of strong women like me who've been abused too. It's all good, you know. That's important.
And I like what you're saying around us kind of supporting each other. I think what we've noticed going around the country to collect stories is there's so much stigma around having survived violence across genders, right? So we're going around the country interviewing Asian and Pacific Islander survivors, specifically women and girls. And what we also learn is, like, there are so many boys and men, per your point around Terry Crews, who are also survivors, or who have witnessed violence. And we want them to come out, tell their stories. And then, per your point, we definitely want folks to support each other, because the more hands there are, the less destigmatized, the more we destigmatize.
Right?
Right?
And these stigmas are created by the abusers. These stigmas are created by fear, by manipulation. These stigmas aren't created by us, so don't take it on.
Right.
You know what I mean? We didn't make this. Nobody said you had to feel this way about speaking out. Nobody said it was gonna make me a weaker fighter if I talked about being abused or taken advantage of or being raped when I was young. You know what I mean? None of it is real. The stigmas aren't real. So just go ahead and peel them off of you, like, and tell these stories.
Right. I think I just want to thank you for telling your story.
Thank you.
And supporting people. I think the other thing that we try to do in this work is to make sure that, we center survivor stories, and then we put the onus on the harm doer and people who are witnessing. We say, we want, a lot of the folks that I know that do this work and people who are survivors, we don't necessarily want punishment for the harm doer.
Right.
We just want the harm to stop.
Yes.
Right? We want you to know that what you're doing is hurtful.
Right.
And we want the people who are hurting to be able to heal, and to feel stronger, right? Because it was never your fault. If someone does harm to you, it doesn't make you weaker that you were hurt. And a lot of times we hear from survivors that the only thing they may have done was to love the other person. And so the idea is that the harm doer not take advantage of that goodness, right?
Definitely.
So I appreciate you sharing your story. Like, you've been through a lot. You've been through a lot.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could say one thing to survivors of different types of violence. What would you like for them to know about just healing?
That's interesting. There's two things I think that I've learned that have helped me turn pain into power. Firstly, is that speaking especially for myself as a fighter and professionally, and somebody who has had a wall built up, it's that being a survivor doesn't mean that you're weak. Admitting abuse doesn't mean that you're weak. And I would say the second thing is that know the importance of your story. We both actually say recognizing your power and utilizing it. When I was first starting out, I'd always wanted to share my story of survival, but I waited. I waited until I got to the UFC, or I waited until I wrote a book, or I wanted to wait for all these imaginary platforms, you know. And I think that you don't have to wait. I realized that the platform, your platform, is right where you stand. So, two things I want you to know: that having survived and being a survivor, having survived abuse means you're strong, not weak. And using that strength to strengthen others by telling your story. And these stories don't get old, because these stories don't get old until this abuse gets old. So even though many of us are telling our stories, many more need to come out and tell their stories, because this is our reality. We need to keep this going until, like I said, the stories aren't old until the abuse is old. Until the abuse is lessened significantly or gone, we need to keep telling these stories. We need to this can't be a trend, this can't be a facade, like a phase of telling our stories. This is an everyday reality. So for those ladies who are like, oh, there's plenty of people more important that tell the stories. No, absolutely not. We have to keep it rolling and keep it going and keep the fight, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I appreciate that. So AAPI Women Lead has been going around the country with this platform on Our Voices, Our Power. Precisely to your point. And I think all the things that you've been saying, I think Asian and Pacific Islander self-identified women and girls don't necessarily have these platforms available, right? So for you, you kind of like fought your way and became the second Vietnamese, American fighter. Right. That's amazing. You fought your way literally, right?
Literally.
And kind of symbolically. And I think our organization was created, and of course you're one of our advisors and one of our main supporters. We are creating our platforms wherever we can be, wherever we are, in the smallest nooks and crannies, to kind of tell the world that we've been here, right?
Yes, actually at your last conference. So I told my survival story with the domestic abuse I endured for years. And I actually did it in front of my mom for the very first time at your conference.
Right.
And afterwards, this young girl came up to me and said, she cried and she said, B, I can't believe you did that. Now that you've done that, I've been waiting for 5 years to tell my dad what has happened to me. And I told her simply, you're living in a good time to be brave to tell your story. Because there's social media for one, but for two, these people in your community, with the Me Too, with the AAPI, there are platforms here for you to tell your story and to come confide in. I'll put Connie's phone number below for everybody to call. No, but all jokes aside, AAPI, join the website, subscribe, follow them. Me Too, all of the platforms that are out here. Join them and tell your story, and you're helping them as much as they're helping you. Power by numbers, you know.
Right.
So, yeah, this is great. I found you, and even though I'm a speaker standing on a stage, it's helped me so much. It's helped me champion my self-identification. Does that make sense? Like, I have worked so hard by myself to find out who I am, what I stand for, who I was allowed to be, and now who I dare to be.
Yes.
And that was very hard. And I have been through so much trauma that's gifted me so much strength, but you should not have to go through as much trauma as I went.
Right.
So with that said, you have help. You don't have to do it alone like I did. This is why I'm here to help you. This is why she's here. This is why Me Too is here. Yeah, join the movement, and then you're helping others too.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah, don't make me stand up here alone, guys.
That's the truth. So I'm glad to hear that we've been able to support you.
Yeah.
I think AAPI Women Lead aims to be that kind of collective where we build a force and a movement of just strong survivors.
Yeah.
Because we didn't even touch upon, what it means to be a refugee, what it means to be, having witnessed war, been a part of war, been born through war. But that's for another episode.
Yeah.
What I do want to ask you to do for us, kind of in summation, is to tell us, if you could talk to our audience again, right? They're typically from 14 to like beyond the late 60s. What would you want to say to our members, our audience, just about being a fighter and just life in general?
Yeah. I would say live with whatever fears you have. All of my teenage years, when I made life harder for myself, all my actions were from fear. So I would say face your fears. Your fear of being alone, or your fear of being vulnerable to others, face it by reaching out to these communities and being amongst these strong, intelligent, beautiful women. Your fear of facing who you are. Look in the mirror and let's do this. Your fear of telling your story. I think not only trauma creates strength, facing your fears creates strength. And my specific advice to you also, especially the younger women, is to reach out to other women. Don't make life harder on yourself by isolating yourself. Don't be scared to be too much or less than or different. And once you do that, you're gonna learn a lot from other women, because there are some badass chicks out here. Embrace the community and embrace other women. Because I spent a lot of my young years searching blindly for who I was. And who you are is really where I've learned myself the most, is seeing and talking and interacting with other people and learning how that makes me feel. Learning how others make you feel, learning how certain things make you feel is very important to learning yourself. I learned that I isolated myself because I was scared I wouldn't be accepted by other women. I learned that I projected being too tough because I was worried I'd be too weak. for certain women. I idolized women. People thought I didn't like women because I didn't make friends with them. It's because I idolized them and I thought they were too good for me. So I isolated myself. But know that there's a community out here. Besides what we're working with specifically is survivors. Besides Me Too, besides AAPI, just in general, girls, get with other girls. Get with women. You know, build a community of women. Just in general, survivor or not, just talk to these women. I'm an athlete. She has a PhD, and the things that we've learned from each other is brilliant. So my advice to you is to pull strength from other women in our community.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so thank you for sharing your points with the rest of the world. And of course, I want to thank you again for coming out to visit us. You have so many projects happening, so many things going on. Tell our audience where they can find out more information about you, and of course, all of these great things that they can learn about and support.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that. And I just recently signed with 1FC, and we are scheduling my debut to be April 12th in Manila, Philippines. You can watch my fights. If you can't make it live to Manila, you can watch it live on the app, One Championship app. I also have a dear to my heart project coming up in Vietnam. I'm the official ambassador for the Karuna Project. And what the Karuna Project is, we go to orphanages specifically for the disabled children in Vietnam, and we build gyms for them. We fundraise money for laptops, for iPads, for anything these kids need, because a lot of these disabled kids are abandoned, and a lot of them don't have things to express their creativity. And for me, important was to build a gym. We have boxing teachers for them now, and the Karuna Project is just great. So I'm very, very passionate about that. You can keep up with my journey. I'm also in the middle of writing a book. She's very excited about it. And but you can keep up with me on Instagram at KillerBMMA, or learn about my story and keep up with what I'm doing. And my nonprofits that I partner up with are on my website as well at teamkillerb.com. Pretty simple. Luckily, I got that name, but teamkillerb.com, and follow AAPI and YouTube or whatever it is for the rest of this interview. I just want to thank you guys for having me and changing my life, and as I empower, it empowers me. So it's great. I'm happy to be here.
Yes.
It's been great talking to you, as always.
It's great. It's always so exciting to see you and to have folks hear your story and to know we kind of have each other's backs. So thanks, folks, for joining us, and we'll talk to you again. AAPI Women Lead, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.